Welcome all. Super excited to have you here. As you know, the purpose of this event is to share a little bit of what this collab is, what we hope we will achieve for the Arbitrum ecosystem, and how it aligns with all our vision and everything that we've been working towards. So I'm going to give a quick overview of how we're thinking about this in RnDAO. And then I'm going to pass it over to Shawn to tell us a little bit more from their perspective, and we'll get going like that as a bit as a Q&A. If you have any questions or anything else that you would like to know or to ask, feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go along. Towards the end, we'll also have more space for discussion. But in the meantime, if you have something that is relevant to one of the topics we're discussing, just drop it in the chat and we'll try to monitor it and make sure that's part of the conversation. So to get going, where we start with RnDAO is that we see that human collaboration, as it happens today, is very much toxic, and no one is really happy with this. We have leaders suffer tremendous pressure to keep up. There is a lot of mental health issues. There is the whole sacrificing my life for the work-life balance if you really want to get to the top. And then especially in entrepreneurship is really, really dire, and it's really, really hard because you're trying to invent an organization and invent a business at the same time. And that spreads you quite thin. And then on the other side, we have all the symptoms of employees being disengaged en masse. That's like about 8 trillion lost a year in productivity, plus loss in institutions. So even the methods that we have to govern nation states, cities, all kind of public services, we're tremendously disappointed with that. And it's actually just getting worse. So as the technology has advanced, that hasn't really caught on to transform the way we're collaborating. And we think there is a gigantic opportunity here. So there is a whole range of trends that are coming together, from remote and hybrid work to freelancing and what we call the long tail of contributors, which is this idea of open organizations where very large groups of people can add small contributions, maybe even part-time, others more full-time, and these can aggregate to a lot more than a traditional organization will be able to accomplish on its own. That's the sort of examples of Wikipedia, etc., that have managed to build tremendous assets and gigantic platforms in very, very little time. And now we are democratizing these sort of patterns and are starting to spread. Obviously, in Web3, with tokenization of ownership and incentivization, we can supercharge these sort of things. AI agents and augmentation come also to help us then manage all the information deluge or fire hose that we're facing. And there is tremendous potential as well to leverage these technologies, especially if we are using decentralized infrastructure in the back. So some of these agents can automatically contract with one another, can be based on trustable infrastructure, trustable outputs, etc. It's a lot of the possibilities that we have. And of course, the whole trend of more autonomous teams where people feel more motivated and engaged, and decentralized organizations. All of this comes to say that the future of work and the future of collaboration is probably going to be radically different from what we have known. The question is, are we going to go to a dystopia of top-down control with loads of buzzword tech where we're using all of these capabilities to spy on people and to control them and put them in some sort of mechanized assembly lines? Or are we going to a future where we empower people and allow them to flourish and really express their talents, and everyone can explore their own possibilities and the best that they can offer? And as we play this intersection, we're hoping that we can be a force for good and have a positive influence here towards what we believe that is this future vision that is not solopreneurs, it's not super individualistic, it's not everyone on their own, because there's tremendous loneliness, there is the mental health challenges that we talk about, and it's not corporations either as we know them, but it's this idea of swarms or networks of autonomous teams that are intrinsically motivated, where people can come and aggregate together to bigger structures. So we are looking to build this technology, or at least serve as a platform for all of you to come and develop this new positive vision. So as that, we're trying to create this modular product ecosystem of swarm tech, and the collab with Arbitrum comes very much at the core of that. So it's giving us the possibility for this partnership, for this alliance, to sponsor 6 research fellowships, because we have found that tremendous amount of ventures and ideas in Web3 have failed because they had beautiful visions, but then figuring out the market viability, the user research, how does this stuff actually transform people's lives who are not degens. A lot of those pieces have historically been missing, and that has led to a lot of failed ventures and a lot of tremendously talented engineers and business people going down dead alleys. Also, we have unfortunately reinvented a lot of things where if we can learn from previous experiments, from what's happened in the co-op world, in the self-management world, in all of these other fields, then we can leverage all of that to stand on the shoulders of giants and go faster and build better technology that actually leads to sustainable ventures and hence can scale and be adopted by the mainstream and really transform how we humans collaborate. So we're going to be funding 6 fellows to go down a rabbit hole of their own with all the support of the community, and then share these findings with everyone else that also help them become experts and position themselves as thought leaders in the specific area that they're choosing, with all our support around that. And then on the back of that as well, launch ventures related to this area. And we also have now the funds to give a grant of 50,000 ARB for one of these ventures, as well as putting all the resources of the RnDAO community to help these ventures succeed. So let's say compared to accelerators or incubators, what we're trying to do here is not just give you a little bit of mentorship where someone tells you, oh yeah, the copy of that pitch deck is not great, you should go and fix it. And then you're like, yeah, I understand the problem, but I don't necessarily have the skills to fix it. Here, we're trying to go and be more of a co-founder, like really go down with you on the trenches. And if what you need is someone to help you fix the copy, and we know how to fix the copy, we can fix the copy for you, because you don't need to be an expert copywriter to build a successful collaboration tech venture. In the future, you can find those other skills. So essentially, through these deeper collaboration, working more in partnership, closer together, we hope that we can accelerate these ventures, and we hope that all the lessons that we learned from one venture and from all of these fellowships, we can reinvest them in the others, and that way accelerate, reduce risks, and essentially provide a better path for entrepreneurship, specifically around this collaboration tech space. So let me now pass it over to Shawn, who, as part of Plurality Labs, now the Thank ARB program, he will tell you a little bit more about what these guys been doing. But one notion that really resonated with me was the idea of pluralistic grants, and that's been the backbone of what's been proposed to Arbitrum. And we enter this partnership, we enter as part of one of these pluralistic grants. So Shawn, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what this means and how it came about.
Yeah, sure. Daniel, thanks for that. And thanks for the preamble into this. So I think it's a good sort of a level set. If I have to start back of like some basic understanding, or let's say a basic come from state, is that we have to agree that the DAO is an experiment, right? And there's a couple things we got to get right in order for this thing called the DAO to survive. And in my mind, if we do this well, DAOs will change the way that we work in the future. And it's quite possible that this is these generations' best chance to change the world. Now, I might be a little bit Pollyannish on this. I might be a little bit idealistic, but really, I think that's the power behind getting this right. And that's why I'm engaged in this engagement now. It's like of how we approach this thing called pluralistic grants, because there's a lot of things we need to fix. And one of them is grants and governance. So we would have said, 6 months ago that DAOs have been historically wasteful at administrating grants and the grants that we've given, they've lacked impact and they've had little strategic direction. And that's what we wanted to solve. We wanted to try and change the paradigm from that and adjust the way that grants had been managed via Web3. And we came away from doing this with kind of 3 different approaches. Let me say it's a framework of how we approach this. So we propose that we eliminate the waste, we try and double down on impact, and we offer strategic direction by sensing the priorities of the community first, responding and allocating resources within those priorities, and then guiding those projects towards greater impact and growth. So if we accept the premise that grants really are not well done in Web3, it's a matter of how do we sense the right priorities with the community. Let's identify what is the right work. Let's go do the right work. let's allocate the resources to those projects that meet the strategic priorities. And then let's work towards improving the impact from those grants and growing the entire ecosystem. That's been our mantra or our approach to administering a pluralistic grants approach. And so what does that mean? It means that there is no one size fits all for the way that we're doing grants. We're experimenting with 6 or 7 different platforms of how we're going to be administrating grants specifically for Arbitrum. So we've engaged HATS. So we have a program which is using the HATS protocol to build a portfolio of projects that are going to be executed. We've engaged David over at Joke Race, who's helping to run a series of races, which are starting next week, to allocate smaller grants to people to go get work done inside the Arbitrum ecosystem. We've also, of course, we've engaged Gitcoin. So we've run 3 different Gitcoin grant rounds so far, and we only got started really in September. We've run 3 additional grants right now so far, and we've done some grant matching, and we've also got another development which is built around permissionless suggestion box. So what we said is, since there is no one right solution today, let's experiment with several different types. And as we're experimenting with those several different types, let's get good at evaluating the impact of those grants after the grant is over with. And I think that those components right there are the core of how we think about the sense, allocate, and that last piece is respond, right? It's like, how do we make sure that we are engaging the community, we're decentralizing, and for those people who have been engaged in the ecosystem, how do we make sure that they're rewarded? Because as many of you know, it's like the price for working in a DAO is damn expensive. It's like, how much time do you have to give away before anybody pays attention to you? And in addition to that, if you have to compare the work that you're doing today, if you had to go back to, I know most people that are in this place are here because they love it. They're not here because they are making a big pile of money. I mean, most of us can go back into their IRL jobs and do better. We want to flip the game. We want to flip the switch on that. We want to try and find different ways of adjusting that so that if you have impact, then you can find a place in the DAO that can support your lifestyle. That's what we're thinking about around pluralistic grants. It's not just about the grant process, but it's broader than that, making sure that we're working on the right things and we are rewarding our contributors appropriately. Daniel, does that kind of answer the question? I know that was a lot.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing. And by the way, a reminder for everyone, if you have some questions as we go along, feel free to drop them in the chat. In the meantime, I'll continue and say that, Shawn, it was that ethos that also very much resonated with us. Is innovation is inherently risky. You don't necessarily know what's going to work or not. You can make educated guesses. You can research everything that's happened before, so you're not repeating mistakes. But then what you have is hypotheses that you need to go and test. And sometimes you find dead alleys, sometimes not. And that's also something that we are trying to champion and work towards, is the idea that we saw that many traditional ways to build ventures are not very successful. Like, we know that in accelerators, about 9 out of 10 startups fail. Of hackathon projects, about 75%, and this is not of projects that join the hackathon, but 75% of hackathon winners, those projects are abandoned. So we still have a very high failure rate. And that's not to say that that's necessarily wrong. You try a thing, it doesn't work, you move quickly to the next one. But the question was, how can we reinvest all of those learnings, make sure that all of the learnings of the things that don't work are safe and reused to power the things that do work? Can we, when someone goes and tries a startup and that startup fails, can you give them a soft landing pad and help them find their next gig quicker? Can you reintegrate in another startup, transmit those learnings? Or let's say when you do a research fellowship, if it works and you learn a lot, can you share that with the ecosystem? Or if it doesn't work, can you also share so others can learn? And then that can also increase your reputation as someone who's doing good methodological, rigorous work, and then move forward. And so we're trying to do with the sort of business cluster that we're trying to create, which is this idea of a focused ecosystem on collaboration tech, partnering with Arbitrum, is that we can facilitate that community to reinvest a lot of learnings into each other. And that way also mean that the ventures that are doing well, they don't repeat mistakes, and they have better access to talent, better access to insights, and as well potentially better access to customers, so they can get feedback quicker and essentially advance more. So Shawn, this was more or less kind of like the pitch that we made to you guys. I would love to hear from you a little bit more about what perspective do you had related to these, and as well related to the priorities that you have sensed in the Arbitrum ecosystem.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you, Daniel, the thing that resonated with me is what you have just mentioned there is what I call the failure of Web3 to leverage the network effect. Now, the network effect is the more nodes that you connect together in a network, the stronger it gets. If you have a telephone system that connects you and your neighbor, it's not valuable. If it connects you and the town, it's more valuable. If it connects you and everybody in the world, it is immensely powerful. And that's what we haven't done yet in Web3. We still have massive silos of expertise and massive silos of learnings that sit in a vat of Gitcoin, which doesn't get out of Gitcoin, or in a vat of Index Co.Op that doesn't get, or Polygon, or any one of these DAO, you name a DAO, there's expertise, there's experience, there's learnings in there that are not getting out of that data sink. It's like we are not taking advantage of the network effect that Web3 is supposed to be built on. And if you think about the problems that we have to solve in the future, it's not going to be the old world type problems of like, hey, I need to run a successful business and deliver total shareholder return for my business. No, the problems we need to solve tomorrow, freaking fix world climate change, right? There is no one organization that's going to solve that. There is no one company or even country that can solve that. The network is going to have to fix that. What you're articulating right there is the ability to harness those learnings and failures, the learning from the failures, so that the network begins to work better because we have those nodes that are connected, and we stop. It's not even competition, but it's just the lack of collaboration that we have today. And that's what one of the things that resonated with me when we went through this proposal is being able to connect those dots together. And Daniel, one more thing that resonated with me is that, and you said this early on, is that Web3 developers, they have an idea and they build it, right? And they build it and they might get some funding, they launch a token, they build a community, and 2 years later, they're still searching for product market fit, right? And as a result, we have a bunch of DAOs that die because they can never figure out product market fit, they can never get to sustainability, and they can never get to profitability. I don't know how many of our top DAOs that we talk about today still can't cover their costs, and they're running off the fumes of the token they launched 2 years ago, hoping to God that they get to the next bear market before the tokens run out. Right? What I like about the approach that Daniel, you've come up with is let's give some of these good thinkers 2 months, a couple months to refine their idea, do research on the idea, look at those concepts, and then the one that's got the most promise, let's give them some additional funding to take that next step and try and build the product out.
Yeah, very much. And it's interesting how I find the whole thing very fractal and self-referential. I'll go to explain what I mean, but we've been doing this for about 2 years. RnDAO hadn't ever engaged with an external partner to fund some of our activities. We're essentially bootstrapping it. And we were lucky that we managed to attract some extraordinary talent. There was especially someone who had been a product manager, had been in startups, had worked in knowledge management, in innovation management, like essentially someone who kind of knew the methodology to make this stuff work. And they were passionate about one of the most complex, difficult, and potentially impactful problems. That is, how do we distribute rewards in a way that is really effective? And they were starting to do some really good research into this area. At the same time, they were kind of like hustling around, trying to get small pockets of funding, trying to apply for like, oh, can you give me a little bit of funding from this DAO to do this research? And they were like, if you give us a product, we'll pay you. But for the research, not just quite. And that was kind of like the situation. And at the end, we ended up losing this contributor. She had to go and get a job. And we were very frustrated that we were losing brilliant talent who's working on the right problems because we cannot give them not even like significant support. They don't need gigantic amount of funding, but the ability to pay the bills just so they have this space to really think through the problem. And we stop solving for symptoms and we really start solving for band-aids. And we make sure what is the solution that is really going to have an impact, that is going to really transform this and is going to really push us forward. Because coming back to the kind of like the second point of how do we get this collaboration to really happen so we can solve the really, really wicked and complex problems that we have, is we've been developing a method for that. Now, we haven't got the final answer yet. We have a lot of ideas for it. But for me, the reason to focus on collaboration tech right now in the context of the world with all the major problems that we have is that I could be focusing on climate change. I could be focusing on water scarcity. I could be trying to find ways to break peace in between nations, right? Like there is all of these super complex problems that we could be working on. What collaboration tech allows us to do, focusing on this space, is that if we can crack this problem for ourselves, if we can look what are the challenges that we have to collaborate, what are the challenges that we have to create sustainable ventures and so on, all of those methods, processes, and the tools we build can then be applied to all the other challenges. So it's an extremely high leverage activities, an extremely high leverage problem that then serves the rest of humanity on whatever endeavor they're trying to collaborate on.
So the focus on collaboration tech, I think, is extremely important, specifically because it's what changes in Web3. It is what changes. It's like the way that we collaborate, how we collaborate within the organization, whether it be how do you come up with the executive decision of which direction we're going to go, how do you execute strategy, and how do you get the work done, how we collaborate internally within the ecosystem, how do we engage the contributors, the stakeholders, the investors, the customers, the users, and the rabid fans. That all changes, right? And then the other piece is how we collaborate across organization. As I mentioned before, that is the network effect, and that's what we need to that's what we need to work on. Because as I said, it's like we can't solve all these problems inside of one organization. And what makes me excited about the direction that we're going specifically for Arbitrum is, I think conceptually we are not building at Arbitrum for Web3. We're not building for Web3. It's like if we build better tech for you, me, and the guy that's sitting next to me at Denver, we're not going to succeed. What we need to do is we need to build the tech that will solve the problem for the rabid fans over at Nike, or the rabid fans of Médecins Sans Frontières, or the people who are working on at WWF. Right? It's like we need to solve those collaboration problems for the distributed organizations in real life in Web 2, so that they will come into Web 3 and say, I've found solutions in Web 3 that solve my collaboration problems. So if we can solve those collaboration problems here within each other, it's not for us. It's for the other 3 billion people that we need to get into Web 3 and on working on Arbitrum. And of course, the other L2s.
Absolutely. And that's the area where we still have so much to progress and advance. Like I still remember, when was it? Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that I started using Discord as I got into Web3. I had never really been exposed to it before. And I'm trying to enter this DAO and they're telling me, yeah, you need to verify your wallet and use /command and paste your wallet here. And then you go to your wallet and sign a message. And I felt like such a hacker at that moment. Like I thankfully I had the time. I had just finished a job. I had been highly paid, so I had some savings. I wasn't freaking out about money. I wasn't like, oh, I need to find a job now. I wasn't like, oh, I already been doing 10 hours of work today. I'm exhausted. I was in a privileged position that allowed me the space to go and learn how to use the tools. But the large majority of the world do not have this chance, do not have this possibility. And if we want to bring everyone else into Web3, if we want to empower people to work better, to chase their dreams, to build things they believe in, instead of being a cog in the machine, in the corporate machine, with soulless jobs, or as David Graeber will call it, bullshit jobs, that essentially no one cares about, and people kind of forgot they're coordinating in between teams that shouldn't exist in the first place, as opposed to actually working across organizations and doing really impactful work, like really speaking with people, figuring out what are the areas we really need to advance on, right? So if we want to solve all of these stuff, we need to be thinking, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it user-friendly? How do we make it that is not just conceptually attractive, but practically is a solution that works on the ground and really makes sense. And now we are starting to have a whole bunch of infrastructure and technologies that unlock these. Like we have account abstraction, we have intents, we have AI as well that can come to transform a lot of AI. And I see a lot of possibilities, and I actually get really excited thinking about this. I see, Shawn, also that you're moving in. I see something brewing in your head going.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, I'll give you a recent failure of coordination, right? In the Web3 space. It's like a colleague, a guy I don't know, tangentially or connected through a series of colleagues who is a leading personality over at ApeCoin, right? Huge in the community. And it's like a 37-year-old guy came down with like cancer, right? And it's like, damn, the thing that was cool was these communities, multiple communities coming together saying, let's donate money to this guy and help him cover the cost for getting over this, right? And give him the love and the support for it. And what we do is like, we were all sent to like a GoFundMe page. And I'm like, what the hell? It's like we're going to go. We're a native DAO community, Web3 crypto community, going to a Web2 solution to give this guy money. First thing I did is get on the phone. It's like, hey, Sav, over at Gitcoin, is there a solution where Gitcoin Direct grants can solve this problem, so we don't have to give result to these Web2 problems? So these Web2 solutions to solve, the technologies, we should have those technologies today. And that's what's exciting about getting better at grants for me, is if we can get better at grants, and at the tail end of the grant, we can say, did that grant deliver the value? Did it solve a problem? Did it have impact? The first answer is going to be no. It's like the first results that we get are probably going to be, they were not that great. But if we continually ask the question, get better at asking the question, we're going to get better results. And the money, the tremendous amount of money in Web3 that is spent on grants, we're going to develop the tools that are going to replace GoFundMe, that are going to replace Visa, that are going to replace all of these Web2 tools that make some shareholder a tremendous amount of money and force people to being, cogs in a wheel. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox on that one.
No, that's great. And as we're talking about real challenges, well, first, let me take a step back and we get here. But we're talking the partnership with the Arbitrum ecosystem. Thanks to the great treasury that we have there, we're able to advance this. As well, there is a lot of infrastructure that we can leverage. So, Shawn, could you tell us a little bit more about that ecosystem? I'm taking the question from Chris. Is what is Arbitrum known for? What kind of strengths, resources do we have there at our disposal? What kind of things we can leverage? And then after that, we'll move a little bit about different challenges or opportunities where we can also help this ecosystem mature and develop.
Yeah, so let me hit that in the context of, if I go back to what we did in the early part of our engagement, in September, we executed a program that we called GovMonth. And GovMonth was all about sensing the needs of the community to identify what was the most important things that we should go build. Now, the little secret on that is a big chunk of that work was trying to define what are the priorities according to the DAO. But the other part of that was, how the heck do we jumpstart and engage this community? And we started with, if we have, I think it was like 600,000 or 800,000 token holders, right? Or token holders that were out there, how many of those are real? We did an analysis, came out with, okay, there's probably about 200,000 unique real token holders that are out there that are not bots, bad actors, and just symbols, right? And so from that list, we're saying, okay, start with 800,000, drop it down to 200,000. We think this is our community. And then through outreach over that 30-day period, we were able to connect and ask 16,000 contributors, individual contributors across the Arbitrum community to help. And we asked those people to help give input on ideas, to give their ideas, to rate, rank, and evaluate ideas, to write mission statements, to evaluate mission statements. I think we generated 120,000 different data points over that 30-day period. In addition to that, we launched we launched a Twitter handle that got us to like 8,000 users in that 30-day period. And so what I found through that experiment was, damn, there's a lot of people in that community that are willing and ready to engage. We have to make it easy for them to engage. So like I said, part of that was defining what the priorities were. The other piece was kind of getting a sense of who are these community members and can we count on them? And the answer is yes, right? I'm a governor, so I think I spend a lot of my time thinking about how do I improve governance? How do we improve the way people make decisions? And then the other piece is that how do we get rid of apathy? Well, I learned right there is like you can get rid of apathy by asking them to give meaningful input. And by the way, we rewarded them too. So if they gave input on, if they wrote a great mission statement, we gave them 20 ARB. If they wrote have good solid feedback, they got 5 ARB out of that, right? And that adds up over a 30-day period to where it turns into real money. So you can turn impact into equity in the ecosystem. So it might be a bit of a limited answer, but based on what I've seen in this ecosystem, Arbitrum has a ton of rabid fans who are ready, willing, and want to engage in the DAO and explode this DAO. We're kind of poking at, okay, how do we now engage them? And then for us, that's our next step is like, how do we fully engage those 200,000 down to 16,000 rabid Arbitrum fans? Daniel, did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much for bringing in that context. So as we have a few different people here who are interested in applying, potentially becoming fellows, essentially finding a problem that is worthwhile and digging deep into it. Would you have any pointers or recommendations that have come from the needs of this ecosystem, or any directions that you would recommend to people? Hey, here is a couple of ideas, at least to get the juices flowing.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, it's like the problem with the DAOs is we're really good at spending money. We're not so good at directing where that money is spent. So based on that exercise we did in the sensing is, okay, we now know which direction we're going, and we've come across with about 4 different priorities that we really should be focused on. Now, the thing about the DAO is the world changes super fast. So the priorities we spent 3 and 4 months ago, they might change, right? And that's the part of this sensing is we're continually sensing to update these priorities. But if you say, okay, put a stake in the sand, where are we today? We have 4 priorities. Priority number 1 is how do we establish world-class developer relations? We know that Web3 runs on developers. Developers are hard, good developers are hard to come by, and we need to make it easy for those developers to come to Arbitrum and to want to be at Arbitrum. And that doesn't mean just stealing devs from OP or stealing devs from Polygon. It means bringing in outside devs as well. We need to achieve governance optimization by improving our governance capabilities in performance and accountability. One of the problems in the DAO is, okay, somebody gets a big pile of money. Are they accountable to the results of that money? Are they accountable to deliver the results? And it's often not the case, right? And we also need to future-proof by strengthening our capacity to scale the platform. And where we are today in Arbitrum is we are at the genesis. There is so far to go because I mentioned those 3 billion users. We need to bring those 3 billion users into Web3. And I am specifically speaking about Arbitrum, but the concept goes much broader. We need to build for Web 2. We need to build for real life. And that's what I start to see happening today in Web 3. And that's exciting. That's exciting to me. And the other piece is we need to grow the community. And when I mean grow the community, there's 3 components of that. The community, in my mind, is the lifeblood of Web3, and it's often the most misunderstood and underutilized component of Web3. I mean, we abuse the community. We ask them to do stuff. We ask them to participate with 3 months for 3 months long. We don't pay them. We don't take their thoughts into consideration. So we need to do better at that. There's 3 components to that. Number 1, the community that we have, we need to upskill them. We need to teach them how to engage, get them to engage on meaningful things. So we need to improve the value that we can get out of those people and reward them for that. The second piece that we need to do is we need to grow the community base. So we need to bring more people into Arbitrum, and we need to bring them in, not just, as I mentioned, from other ecosystems, but people that are coming into from IRL, right? So gaming is a great way to do this, right? And so I look at those that are developing gaming on the Arbitrum platform. That's how we're going to get a slew of new participants. And while they're here, hey, by the way, do you want an NFT? If you had that NFT, now do you want to participate in governance? So it's like a contribution pathway. And then the third component of that is grow the ecosystem, get people into it, grow their capabilities. And then the third piece is grow the value of every single one of those users, right? And so those are the 4 things that we're focused on: DevRel, governance optimization, future-proofing, and the ability to scale the platform and grow the community through awareness and participation. Daniel, those are the 4 things that I would be looking at to have an impact upon the Arbitrum ecosystem for somebody who is interested in submitting a proposal. Daniel, did that I think that kind of answered what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. That's great. And then to say, obviously, all of these priorities, they're complex. Like what you require to have a healthy ecosystem of developers that are highly engaged and so on. A lot comes into consideration. So feel free to have your original take to find one particular slice or one particular component of how we enable that, and then focus on it. You don't necessarily need to take the whole challenge onto its own. If you want to take the whole challenge onto its own, that's also okay. What we want to do is to get you started thinking through these problems and the components of these problems and the tools and capabilities and systems and everything that is needed so that we can enable these behaviors to happen. So essentially at the end, what we can have is, and we take the ArbitrumDAO as our petri dish to advance all of this experimentation, all of the innovation, and hopefully very successful solutions that we can come up with. But it's like, if we envision that ecosystem really, really thriving, and serving all of the Web2 users, really addressing these collaboration challenges that we're talking about, then the question is, what are the pieces that are needed to enable that? And we have a long list of problems there that can align with the priorities that the Arbitrum community needs right now. So it's this sort of Venn diagram of what we need for the bigger picture and what the community needs right now. And it's part of this is an example of a sort of thinking that we're trying to embed into everything that we do, that is the multi-stakeholder thinking. That is, we don't create organizations for a single purpose, we create organizations to serve their stakeholders. So they need to serve the people that work in them, they need to serve their users, they need to work for everyone who's participating and engaging with this organization. And in this case, the Arbitrum ecosystem is one key stakeholder for us. So we need to pay attention of how we're serving them, how then the people who are contributing of these ventures are being part of this relationship. So if we can find these essentially these nuggets that fit in the middle of these Venn diagrams, that's really the fairy dust, the goal that we're looking for. And where we can then go and put all our resources to support these people, to support these fellows and these venture builders, to go and build the solutions that we need. So yeah, Shawn, if you want to drop another comment, feel free to it. Otherwise, I'm gonna let me know, just unmute yourself if you want to add anything else. Otherwise, I'm gonna be moving to questions from the community. If there is anything that you guys would like to ask or comment on, or even if it's just to say hello and that you're excited or something, just feel free to raise your hand and we'll pass it over to you.
Let me just mention one more thing. So I mentioned those 4 priorities, and what I love about how we're approaching this between RnDAO is that this is a starting point, right? And in God willing, if this approach works in our next installment, this will be bigger. In addition to that, those priorities that I listed there, they can change, right? And that's the beauty about being able to continually sense and to get a sense of which direction is the DAO going. And that's also the power of Web3, is that we have the ability to pivot so fast, so that this is what's important today. And if for whatever reason you're not one of those 6 people that are chosen, don't worry, continue thinking about those ideas, because God willing, we're going to do this again. It's going to be a larger pool. The priorities might change. But I think the approach, the mechanism has absolute merit, and it will probably have a new set of priorities at that moment in time, which just reflects the ability for Web3 to change what's most important at that point in time. But happy to go over to questions.
Yeah. Christoph, over to you.
Hey, I'd like to ask about the details, like what exactly will be the outputs of those research fellowships? Like what do they have to provide? And how is this venture investment going to be structured? Like how exactly is it going to work as a venture investment? Like what is the structure there?
Yeah, sure. So the important thing to understand about the research fellowships is that we see them as the beginning of a journey towards building a venture. we're just at some point speaking with one of the leaders in innovation at Microsoft, and they were saying what usually happens is we put some money into ventures, they build the thing they wanted to build, then that fails, and then they start talking with users. So here we are like, okay, can we avoid that phase of we give you money to build something that's going to fail, and can we start talking with users earlier? And so the activities of the fellowship are primarily engaging with users, understanding the market, really understanding the problem, and trying to suss out what is the solution that really makes sense. We're going to ask you to then share your findings publicly. So we're going to be organizing an event at the end of the fellowship where you can share all your learnings, both the things that work, that don't work, the dead alleys that you have found, the mistakes not to repeat, as well as the possibilities that you're excited about. And also publish an article about it. This is not like an academic research paper. Academic research is fantastic, but that's not what we're interested here. What we're interested here is in very pragmatic, very applicable, what allows us to understand what should be built, what really makes sense to build, and get to a successful venture. So throughout the fellowship, you're already starting to build the relationship with potential customers, the insights, the whole supportive network and community around you that allows to build the right venture. And you would have hopefully found all the dead alleys through which you don't want to go already, because other people have gone already through those, and you learn from those mistakes. So the outputs of the fellowship, in very pragmatically, is you're going to give a talk and you're going to write an article. But what matters is the content and the sort of network and community that we can build around you, so that then we translate these into a venture. And that's where then the next part of the program comes in, which is this venture building program. So as we're talking about, what we're trying to do here is create those network effects, create that collaboration, create the knowledge transfer, knowledge exchange, knowing that when the founder of one venture has a great designer in their team, usually loads of other great designers come around. But you don't need more great designers, because you already have a great designer, and there is only so many great designers that can work in the same team. So you can be like, hey, that other team has a great engineer but doesn't have a great designer. How about you go and speak with them? So it's these sort of collaborations that can happen at the level of talent, at the level of connecting you with another investor, connecting you with a potential customer, passing insights, even potentially pieces of code. If you build certain module or something that another venture can use, we also want to incentivize this collaborative behavior of like, hey, we build this solution, let's say, for authentication that didn't exist in the ecosystem, is not the core of our venture, but it's something that other ventures need. Great. Can you also use that module to fast track and accelerate your progress? And because you built it, you can also be rewarded by it. So that's part of the whole organization design that we've been refining in RnDAO over the last 2 years to enable, and where we want to bring ventures inside. So what you receive is, we have, for this first round, we're going to select one venture with that's going to receive a grant from Arbitrum of 50,000 ARB tokens, and as well as very significant support from the RnDAO community and from the other ventures that we already have in RnDAO. They're going to be part of this collaboration. And then there is an aspect of cross-ownership. So there is a small percentage of equity that goes and goes into cross-ownership with the other ventures, so that we have as well the economic financial incentives to encourage this collaboration. And if this is working well, if then in the next round we can get a lot more of this behavior happening, we show to the Arbitrum community that we're doing great progress, that we're addressing things that are important for them, that we're building good ventures that are exciting, and everyone is going like, yes, this thing is good, let's continue, then we can hopefully bring a lot more ventures into that cross-ownership ecosystem. And that's how it starts to compound, is the more people that are solving different parts of the puzzle, we can move away from the lone ventures that are trying to do a bit of everything. And when you're a lone startup, it's really easy. Oh, I'm looking for product market fit. How about I tackle that problem? And a user told me about that other need. What if I try to build a prototype for that? And before you realize, you're expanding horizontally, and you're a jack of all trades, master of none. So here instead, we're going to try to really encourage you to be very modular, focus on one thing, do it really well, and collaborate with the other ventures, so that together you can deliver more complex value propositions that are more effective through, again, the whole approach. Christoph, does that answer your question?
Not really. Like maybe let me add one more question, because like I'm interested from the perspective of a ArbitrumDAO delegate. So I'm rather trying to understand what exactly are we funding and what will we get in return. So I understand that the research fellowship is basically kind of like user research and product research. And in terms of this venture investment, like, is it a grant or is it actually an investment that will have some return in the future? So that's one question. The second one is how and who is going to choose both the research fellowship participants and the venture that will be invested in?
Okay, so thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So now I understand where you're coming from. So the venture is a grant, and what we're going to select for is ventures that benefit the Arbitrum ecosystem. So we are privileging ventures that are going to be based on Arbitrum infrastructure, and that way align with the Arbitrum tokenomics business model, as well as, because they are collaboration tech, they should enable the whole Arbitrum ecosystem as part of this capacity of better collaborate that enables essentially people to build better, more successful projects, more successful whatever it is that they're trying to build on top of Arbitrum. So it has both beneficial outputs compared to, let's say, a grant program where you just give money to some developers to build a thing. What we are seeing is that when you do that, there is still a very high failure risk for those projects. And so here we put the incubation support around it, or the venture building support around it, the collaboration network around it, so that we reduce the failure rate of projects that are built on top of Arbitrum. So that after you have deployed significant capital, you don't go and see, oh yeah, we paid for all of these projects, but half of them are dead. What we want to be able to say, and obviously this will require the ventures maturing, but what we want to be able to say is, yes, Arbitrum funds was deployed into these ventures, and now you have a whole ecosystem that is working, that is operating on Arbitrum, that it makes it easier for anyone else to build, to collaborate, to operate on Arbitrum instead of potentially other ecosystems. And this enables that kind of compounding, the sort of gravity that we kind of generate. So then essentially going to Arbitrum is a no-brainer, and is like, in Arbitrum, I have great tools, I have great resources, there is already all these other projects I can integrate with. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I will have additional questions, but there are people waiting in line, so I will wait my turn.
Sure, thank you. Feel free to message us, and we're very happy to answer any other questions, either in Twitter or DMs, whatever is better for you. CryptoSmart, over to you. CryptoSmart? Oh, yeah.
Hello? Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? Is this clear? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to say a really big thank you for this initiative, kind of. I don't have so many questions yet. I'm just glad that something like this is coming up. But my suggestion would be, I've listened to you talk about the DevRel, the 4 main goals that we're looking at, and I'm really what's the word? I'm really excited about the DevRel session area, because that's I have a not-for-profits in that area called Borderless, and the kind of gap that I've seen in the space is a lot of the work on community building is mostly virtual. The physical interactions and the physical aspects are not as much as the virtual interactions. And it's one of the things that developers really do need. As devs, you think, oh, you do all your remote stuff and you interact and it's all good. But until you have the physical interactions with you people you are building products for, then you understand the importance of what you're building, and then you understand why. You guys talked about how we should build products for Web 2, so that we can get these millions of people into Web 3, simplifying our production process, our building process, so that other people can understand it. And I'm glad that we're looking in this light, because a lot of chains are not looking at this in this light. And a lot of the community activities that we have are mostly about, oh, come work in the DAO, come do this in the DAO. are not really on developers, especially those who are just coming up, the new ones who are in the university. So I already run things like this. So I understand how that can be of a really good opportunity for young people to get into this space from the universities. I think like if part of our DevRel session efforts are tailored to the young people in universities. I'm talking from Africa. I don't know how it is in other countries, but where I am in Nigeria,
CryptoSmart, sorry. If you want to discuss a specific idea that you have, I would suggest we can use the RnDAO Discord for that. If one of my colleagues could give me a hand and share the link in the chat, that'd be great. If you have a specific question that you like to ask us, very happy to answer it now. But if you want to discuss about your solution, maybe we do it there, as we have we're a little bit short of time and we have other people waiting.
Okay.
For questions. Hope that's okay.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Gus, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. I was totally following and engaging what you were sharing before, Dan, about how collaboration framework can just push and move forward innovation and decrease a lot of costs within it and so on. I'm wondering though, how you people are framing competition, because at the end of the day, it is also true that, especially in the venture scenario, that people, they have their insecurities, they want to succeed over others, they want to hide information, they don't want to share the knowledge around. So what about that part? How are you preventing from that?
Sure. So part of the idea, and every team is autonomous. So ultimately, every team decides what is best for them and how they want to behave. Then, by the very nature of what we're doing, the sort of people that we attract already have self-selected to be the collaborative type. Like, people building collaboration technology tend to be collaborative. That being said, is then really important to anchor it in the mechanism. So as we were saying, there is the cross-ownership between ventures and with the ecosystem as a whole that serves to incentivize collaborative behavior. Is a small percentage, so about 10% of each venture. So it's small enough that still your primary focus should definitely be your venture and the thing that you're working on, but not too small that you don't have skin in the game in the ecosystem succeeding. Then the other thing is we have developed a series of processes for rewards and compensation that enable an open team. And what we mean by this is other ventures and other contributors should be as enabled as possible to add value to what you are doing in your own team and be rewarded by that. So we have a system for dynamic equity that enables essentially to account how much value has been added into a specific initiative. And that means that the more people contribute, the more they own that initiative. That also means that as you develop things that are valuable for the ecosystem, you can compound value, because they're not only valuable for you, but they can be valuable for others. As I was saying, when you develop a piece of code, for example, that others can benefit from, maybe that can be open source, but maybe if that actually requires an API and maintenance, etc., you can offer that API not only for your own tool, but also for others. And that slowly can start to mature almost into a whole infrastructure business that could be spin out or could become an additional source of revenue or value accrual for your venture. So it's through this series of mechanisms, and there is a lot of work and research. Essentially, this is already one area of research that we've been investigating for the last few years, is how to facilitate these sort of behaviors, specifically around rewards and compensation. We're then thinking about legal and all the other elements that need to come together. But that's the sort of vision that we're working towards. And we're already starting to see a lot of these behaviors happen within the ventures that we have already in RnDAO, where they give resources to one another, they help each other find contacts. Oh, I need someone for a newsletter in marketing. Here is the contact. This piece of code that one venture is building is now potentially going to be used in the other venture. The API for ChatGPT, etc., that one developed is also being applied to in another venture, etc. And the more people can contribute across ventures as well as the venture teams grow, the more these people are incentivized for both ventures to win and not just one other. That being said, if a venture is not succeeding, if a venture doesn't manage to get traction on its own, attract funding, generate impact in users, it's going to die, is not going to have the resources or the excitement to continue attracting attention, and it dies, and it's hopefully recycled. All the value that was there is recycled and can be distributed to other parts of the ecosystem. Artem, over to you, and then we're gonna have to start closing.
Thank you, Daniel. So you mentioned that you are going to prioritize, or basically, it's important for you to pick the ventures that are already using Arbitrum or building something on top of Arbitrum, right?
So for the research,
I'm just curious, like, how is it the critical thing for this program, for this Co.Lab? And if that's critical, and like, do we need to add something to the product so that it would use Arbitrum just to be eligible or something like that?
So the first thing is, in the fellowship, you don't need to have built anything. You're going to go and dive deep into a problem. So if you haven't built a thing yet, that's okay. If you started building a thing and you realize it was the wrong thing, or you still want to do more research, you can go and do the fellowship. Then this program is sponsored by Arbitrum. So make no mistake, we need to make sure this is benefiting the Arbitrum ecosystem. We need to make sure that this is solving meaningful challenges for them. And if the infrastructure is based in Arbitrum, this is obviously a gigantic plus and gives you a lot of points, because it is part of the business model of that ecosystem, and it's something that benefits that whole community. If you're building a general purpose tool, let's say, that has no blockchain components, we'll have to explore it. It depends. Ultimately, it's a competition for who are the 6 fellowships that get selected, and we're going to have to pick those that are the best fit for the Arbitrum community, and to advance specifically within that subset, to advance specifically this area of collaboration tech and align with the strategic priorities that have been highlighted. So if we get a venture that is not necessarily aligned with that, but you have an amazing pitch of why this is really needed, this is going to really help the Arbitrum community, this is going to really work on those strategic priorities, it just so happens that it's not generating transaction fees, we're going to still give it a fair chance. If you can do the same thing plus transaction fees, well, obviously that's a lot better. Cool. All right, guys. So we're already quite over time. I need to run. Shawn, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you everyone else for attending this event. We have the problem statement workshop where you can work on the problems that you had with mentorship from our team. We have Drea, who's a deep expert in research, in collaboration tech. She used to lead user research in Google Workspace, in Asana, in Inuit. She's got this shit down to a science. So you really want to go and benefit from the opportunity to work a little bit with her, refining your problem statements for the fellowship. And we're also holding a speed networking event. You can access those from Luma/RnDAO, lu.ma, RnDAO. Someone is please putting it on the chat for me. And that's it. Thank you very much for joining us. If you have any more questions and comments, we're in the RnDAO Discord. Very happy to answer and work with you. Again, Shawn, thanks for joining us. Have a lovely rest of the day, everyone.